Welcome to Tom's Next Level Exam Prep video for land use controls. I'm Tom and I've helped hundreds of students pass their exams and start their real estate careers. My Next Level Exam Prep video series is designed to help you do that very same thing. I urge you to watch my Welcome and my Exam Insights and Strategies videos for a complete overview of this entire series. You'll learn more about how to get the most benefit out of these topical videos. Here's some key points from my welcome video. These exam prep videos are going to put you in test world. I like to just focus on testable material. I'm certainly not going to reteach the course that you have from your education provider, but these videos are designed to supplement what you already have. That way I can drill down on just the testable items and what to look out for in the exam. I always encourage you to take a lot of notes. The more things you write down, the more likely you are to remember those things when you get into the testing situation. So gather your course materials, your notebook, and your positive attitude, and let's get started going through land use controls. First thing we're going to talk about is the 4 government rights in land. You know from your course material they're called police power, eminent domain, taxation, and Escheat. Acronym to remember those is PETE, P-E-T-E. It's important to note one true thing that might show up on the test about these government rights is that they take precedence over and they override an individual owner's rights. Let's start by taking a look at the government right of police power. It says those laws are passed on a local level. Well, anytime it calls out in your material at which level laws are passed, make sure you make a note of that because that's the way the test question will come out. Now, for test purposes, there's only 3 levels they're going to use in your material. A local level, a state level, and the national, sometimes referred to as a federal level. So anytime, again, it calls out one of those levels with any particular topic, make note of what that level is because that's how it'll show up on the test. It's going to show up something like this. Police powers and the laws associated with police powers are passed at which level? It's going to be local level, not state or national. So be aware of the level these laws are passed at. What's a master plan used for? Cities use master plans to determine where they want different parts of the cities to grow and how they want that city to grow. Manufacturing over here, agriculture will stay in this part, high density residential here, low density residential over there, commercial in another part of the city. All of that's laid out in every city with a master plan. Test question, what's a master plan used for? Test answer, control growth. That's what master plans are used for. Zoning laws, what are zoning laws for? Well, they determine the land use. They're obviously associated with the master plan. Manufacturing over here, commercial over here, residential over here. So the zoning laws in a city, in conjunction with their master plan, determine how land in any particular area is going to be used. When buildings are built, homes, commercial buildings, whatever, they have to follow a building code. Building codes are there for electrical and for plumbing and for framing and all the different types of activities that go into building a home or a commercial building. The building codes have to be followed. Test question, what are building codes for? They're for public safety. Building codes are there to help with public safety. There'll be another question, what happens if there's a conflict between a local, state, or a national building code? Which one of those codes is going to be followed? It says on the slide on the bottom, the most strict is the one that's going to be used. So the strictest code is the one that will be used if there's a conflict. Let's talk about some more terms that are involved with police power. Very important you know the distinction between all of these. Let's start with non-conforming use. Non-conforming use is created when the city government changes zoning laws in an existing area. For instance, if you have a 50-acre farm and you're zoned agricultural and everybody around you is agricultural, but the city then decides, given their master plan, that they want to grow the city in that direction and change it all to residential. Well, you went to bed last night and your farm is on land that's zoned for agricultural. You woke up the next morning, the city changed the law and the zoning for the area, and now your farm is in an area that's zoned residential. Do you have to move? No, you don't have to move. You're grandfathered in is the term, but since you were there first and then the city changed the zoning around you, you have a non-conforming use. Your current use doesn't conform with the current zoning. You're using the land for agricultural, but the city changed it to residential. And are you mad about that? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Some farmers said, you know, that's great because now my land isn't just farmland. Now I can sell my land to a developer who might want to come in and build houses because it's been zoned residential. Typically that can make the land worth a little more money. However, that's a non-conforming use. Just remember that. The city changes the zoning around your property. You can still stay there. The term is you're grandfathered in. I'd make that note, grandfathered in. But that's a non-conforming use. Now that's totally different than a special use permit. Special use permit works this way. Let's assume you own a home in a residentially zoned area. And in that zoning, the city says no home-based businesses. And you decide you want to open a church or a daycare. A daycare will be likely the example you'll see on the test. If I decided I wanted to open a daycare in my home, I'd have a problem with that because I'm zoned in an area that says no home-based businesses, and it's a residentially zoned area. So I would have to trot down to the city hall and apply for a special permit, a special use permit, and ask them if I could open a daycare in my home that's currently zoned only residential. And if they agree to that, and that's why you see daycares in sometimes residential neighborhoods, because there isn't another daycare for miles. If I can make a good case to the city that they should allow me to have a daycare there, then I could open that business. But the city would issue me a special use permit. The permit they would issue me would allow me to use my property for something different than what it's already zoned for. And obviously that's different than the non-conforming use where the city went ahead and changed the zoning all around me. Here, I just want to change the zoning for my property and I'm looking for their permission. A variance. A variance is something you need to do with the city if you want to build something on your property that doesn't comply with the current city codes. The most common one you'll see in the real world and probably on the test is what if I want to build a fence or build a new garage and it's going to intrude on one of the lot lines. There's something called setbacks out there. Setbacks, you can't build on the end of your lot line. If my lot is 100 feet wide, I can probably only build within about 10 or 15 feet on either side of that lot line. There are building setbacks, and cities have those zoning controls. I can only build within a few feet of the front, the few feet of the back, and the 2 side yard setbacks. Well, what if my garage is only going to fit if I intrude on that setback by 1 or 2 or 3 feet? Is it a chance I might be able to get that done? Well, sure. You have to go to the city, bring them a diagram, and make your case that this would be good for me and it'd be okay for the neighborhood if my garage intrudes on that lot line by 2 or 3 feet. If they agree to that, then I would apply for a variance and they would grant me the variance to do something different than the current zoning allows. That's what a variance is. Building permits and building codes. If you want to build a property, certainly you want to build a new house, you have to go to the city normally and get a building permit. You have to get a building permit, and what's the building permit for? These are answers to test questions. Excuse me. What's the building permit for? Building permit is to make sure you follow the building code. That's the purpose of the building permit. And what are the building codes for from our last slide? Public safety, to make sure things don't fall down, that they stand up, that the electrical's done right. So you have to get a building permit to ensure that you follow the building codes. And the city sends inspectors out when the house is being built. So building permit is required, so they assure you that you're following the building code. Then when the building is complete and the city comes out and looks at all of the work that you did, or that your contractor did, and said the electrical is right, the plumbing is right, all of those things are okay, the city will issue you a certificate of occupancy. So, test question. What does the certificate of occupancy signify? It signifies that you've met all of the building codes and all the requirements that were in your building permit. So that's the three-step process I want you to think of for the test. You get a building permit to make sure you follow the building codes, and once the building codes have been followed, they'll give you a certificate of occupancy. Let's talk about the right of eminent domain next. What is the right of eminent domain? Okay, eminent domain is the government's right to take private land for public use if they determine there's a higher and a better use. It might be to put in a school, but the cleanest example I can give you is highway expansion. How does the city or the government acquire all the land necessary to widen a highway for miles and miles? Typically through the right of eminent domain. Now, notice for the test purposes here, I want you to make some distinctions. I said on the slide, it says, the right of the government to take private land is eminent domain. The process they use is condemnation. That's highlighted here, and everything on my slide is here is because this is what shows up on the test, and this is what gets students confused from time to time. So the right to take private land is eminent domain, but the process is condemnation. Okay. The other thing they have to do if they're going to take your private land through the right of eminent domain using condemnation, they have to compensate you for it. You have to be paid a reasonable amount. A lot of times there are lawsuits when the government wants to take somebody's private land. In almost all cases, the lawsuit is not whether or not the government can take the private land, because they can through the right of eminent domain. The lawsuits are about how much is the private party going to be compensated for it. And clearly, the private party is going to feel their land is of a higher value than the government wants to offer them for it. So they have to be compensated for it, but remember which one is the right, which one is the process. Okay? And the landowner has to be compensated. Eminent domain is an example of involuntary alienation. Now, we haven't defined these terms in this video yet, so let's go there. Alienation, I want to start with that one. Alienation in real estate is any transfer of title of ownership, okay? Any transfer of ownership is alienation. If I sell my house to you, and you want to buy it, and I want to sell it, and you offer me a reasonable amount of money, and we sign a purchase agreement, at closing, you get title to my house, and I have alienated myself from that property. I no longer own it. You now own it. That's alienation. Voluntary, involuntary is pretty self-explanatory. If I want to sell my house to you and you want to buy it, is that voluntary alienation? Absolutely. What if the government takes my land and I don't want them to take it? Even if they compensate me, I don't want them to do it. Are they going to get it? Yes. They will, okay, typically. But I didn't want them to do it. So it's been alienated, but it was involuntary alienation. So the test question is going to be, eminent domain is an example of what? The correct answer will be involuntary alienation, but they'll mix those words up and throw in some other words. The correct answer you're looking for is involuntary alienation. We're already up to the T in Pete, the third government right, taxation. Talk about property taxes for a minute. The government has a right to charge you property taxes on your land in an effort to pay for city services and other things. So, Property taxes are done and passed at a local level. Same as my earlier scenario. Local, state, or federal level, property taxes, local level. Make that word association. Property taxes have the highest priority of any lien that might be on the property. If you don't pay your property taxes, they can put a lien on your house. And if there's any other liens, property tax liens go to the top of the food chain. Always remember that. Property tax liens have the highest priority. Property tax amounts are based on assessed value. The assessed value. There typically are two values to a property. There's a market value and an assessed value. Your taxes are based on the assessed value. You'll see the term ad valorem on the test. I know we got a lot of English words for you to try and remember on that exam. They got to throw Latin in here every now and then. Ad valorem is just Latin for at value, okay? But you want to remember which value? Assessed value, not market value. The city may also put some special assessments on your property. What are special assessments? Well, any improvement made that affects your property directly could result in a special assessment. Common things are a new street in front of your house, new curb and gutter, sidewalks, lighting in the neighborhood. If it's a narrow focus that the improvement's going in, but it directly affects your property, you could get a special assessment against your property. Then you'll have to pay your fair share of that improvement when it goes in. Just be aware special assessments also have a second highest priority. Property taxes are the top of the food chain, special assessments second right behind property taxes. Now what if you don't pay your property taxes or your special assessments? Well, if you don't pay your special assessments, you can get a lien put on your house by the local government, city or county. They can lien your house, and if you still don't pay them, they can foreclose on your property with a special assessment foreclosable lien. So that's how special assessments are enforced. We are already up to the E in Pete. The government right of Escheat is the government's reversionary right to take land. Well, why is it a reversionary right? Well, in the beginning, the government owned all the land. And then they offered some to homesteaders, and they sold some to other people, and they sold it to private parties. Well, if there's nobody else to get the land in certain situations, the government can exercise their reversionary right of escheat and take ownership back. So, but when would they ever do that? They would only do that if the property's been abandoned by the owner. For some reason, an owner walks away and has nothing to do with the property anymore, and the government can't find them. Or, more typically in the marketplace, if an owner dies intestate, which means they die without a will, and so there was no will to say who they wanted to get the ownership of the land. So they died without a will, intestate, and they didn't have any heirs. They didn't have any sons or daughters or brothers or sisters. There was nobody else to take ownership or to get ownership of the land. So since nobody else is there to get ownership of the land, the government will exercise their right of escheat, and the government will take ownership back. Not because they want the property, maybe it's a little run down, maybe it's in tough shape, but because somebody has to own it. And what the government will do is, if they take property like that back through the process of escheat, is then make a decision: do they fix it up, do they tear it down, do they offer it for sale as is, and they do it as an effort to get the property back into private ownership somehow. Well, that does it for government rights in land. Let's talk about private controls on land. Typically, private controls are done through deed restrictions. And deed restrictions are normally used by developers to help maintain the value of properties. There'll be deed restrictions like you can't park an RV in the driveway for more than 2 or 3 days at a time. No boats stored in the driveway or next to the house. Things like that are always done to maintain the value of the neighborhood. In addition, homeowners associations, condominium complexes, things like that will always have what they call CC&Rs. Those are covenants, conditions, and restrictions. A covenant is a promise to do something or to not do something. Remember from your discussion on deeds, there are covenants in deeds. A covenant is a promise. I promise to do something or not do something. Like I promise to maintain my yard. There's a covenant, or I promise to keep my landscaping in good shape. A condition is something stronger than a covenant. A condition might restrict pet size. You can't have a dog more than 50 pounds or 100 pounds. That's a condition. If you do, you're violating the condition, and it might jeopardize your status in the association. And a restriction is going to be something even a little bit stronger. It might restrict the height of a fence. You can't have fences in the neighborhood more than 6 feet high or 4 feet high. Or the front yard fence can't be more than 3 feet high, but the rear yard can be 6 feet high. Those would be restrictions. So just remember the word associations here for the test. CC&Rs are covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Biggest item is deed restrictions are private controls. They're not government controls. That one shows up on the test on a regular basis. Well, that concludes this episode on land use controls. Take a look at my other available national exam prep video topics. Pick one that you think you might want to brush up on. Be happy if you take a look at those. And thank you very much for watching. As always, if you like the video, you can click on the icon below. If you subscribe to my video series here, I will be happy to send you updates. When new videos come out or when I update any particular video, I'll send you those. Be sure to make a comment if you choose, and if you share this video with somebody else, I'd appreciate that. If you have a friend or somebody you know who's also taking real estate classes, if you think they might find it helpful, feel free to share the video. Otherwise, hopefully I'll catch you in the next exam prep video.